improve on the Grisha game. But let's find out.
And you've stated that we might get a Najdorf. No, okay. We get an accelerated dragon. But you mentioned that payback is a motivator. We have to recall that in order to win the World Rapid Championship, Nordebek beat Nd5 head-to-head. That's
right. I don't know how much that will be in Nepo's mind, but it could. And so this early Queen B6, I think I want to say it's a Uzbek idea because I saw another Uzbek player use this against Dominguez in the World Cup. I believe, I'm not remembering his name right off, but he did actually knock out Dominguez in the World Cup.
So this is the problem when there are all these talented players from the same country. Was it Sindarov? Was it Vokidov? You pick one. I don't remember who it was off the top of my head, but this line, Queen B6, just displacing the knight from D4. And after Queen A5 check, this pawn on B2 is hanging. So you could bring a knight to C3, right? Knight back to C3, for example, or knight 1 to C3, or play bishop to D2. But now Jan is the one thinking. I can't believe I'm saying this so many times today.
Well, it has been working out for him so far. So he doesn't mind spending a little bit of time trying to figure out what exactly is going on here, but ultimately decides to drop that knight back from B5. And we're going to see a pretty standard Maroczy, I think. Although knights on C3 and D2, not too typical for a Maroczy.
That's right. And the Maroczy bind is right here. We see white with that great control of the D5 square, also good control of B5. But that means that black can't break open the position with this push, which means that you're going to have restricted pieces and limited space. So, Jeffrey, at this point, the eval bar says white is better. It typically does in positions like this, where more space, better control. But what do you make of Nordebek's setup and the fact that he's doing so very quickly?
Yeah, the setup is very standard. So by Nordebek, usually they go knight d7 next in these types of positions. And as we've seen, at least based on Hikaru, I think he's really trying to, speed it up a bit. That worked really well, and probably getting some of that extra confidence from beating Hikaru allows you to play faster as well.
For sure. And he plays rook F to C8, a move I was going to suggest is a standard idea. And you usually want to move your rooks towards the center. And here he moves away because look at the action. It's taking place on the queen side. So the rook on A8, maybe will go to B8 at some point, but it's needed to protect black's setup on the queen side. So knight D7 now, your idea, maybe we'll see H5, king H7, queen H8. That happens sometimes in these positions. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
That would be really funny, yeah. But I think the more standard way, he might also be looking for A5 because provoking B5 and getting the C5 square could be to black's liking. But starting out with knight D7 certainly very, very flexible and logical as well.
So F2 to F5 wins the piece. So F4 is very appealing. The downside of F4 is you have to think about bishop D4 type of ideas. You don't usually want to trade your fee and get a bishop. But in this position where you lack space and breathing room for your pieces, the move bishop D4 will make sense in some lines. But A5, you called it, Jeffrey.
Yeah, F4, it did seem attractive to me at least. But Nepo, okay, knight D5 also makes a lot of sense. But now after A5, the thing is, the one part of knight D5 I don't like is that black has now the option to take it at any moment. Where previously you had this F4, F5 idea, and then you really were threatening to trap the bishop.
And now, as you're saying, the bishop always has an escape. It can take this knight. And B5, there's knight to D4. So this knight on D7, it cleared the path for this bishop, and then it can come to C5, and all of a sudden, black takes over these vulnerable dark squares.
Yeah, starting to really like the prospects of black's position. Once if you allow me to take on B4, then maybe I play something like rook A2, and all kinds of active knight jumps come to mind, knight D4, knight E5, and so on. So position kind of playing itself now for black.
And that's why Nd5 thinking here, Nordebek up well over a minute on the clock at this point. And it's a big decision because either you allow this rook to activate from its starting place or you play B5 and you just concede all of these dark squares on the queen side. What do you think he's going to do here? Do you think he'll play B5? Another option, is knight F4 going for this bishop, but sacrifices a pawn over here?
Yeah, I think he'll likely start with rook B1. And then, yeah, your idea, knight F4 could be on tap.
You called it. He played it. Not the first time he's played rook to b1 today, but in a very different position. And here we see a trade. Great news for black on the A file.
Yeah, the question is, how serious is this threat of knight f4? Like, would you be worried about it as black?
But if I'm worried about it, what can I do? Just take your knight?
Okay, well, clearly he's not worried. I'm just trying to imagine this transition where, okay, but c5 is now very interesting. Knight 4 with tempo.
I was actually wondering if you went knight f4, if I could take on e3, but now your knight still defends. So rook takes e3, not what I want to go for, but pawn takes with b7 loose. That looks a bit unappealing from black's perspective.
Yeah, really good find here, I think, from Nepo. And now Nordberg might need to find a good idea here.
Okay, well, what could that good idea possibly be? Knight c4 coming.
Yeah, I'm trying to take on c5 and put something on d4, but yeah, there's just tactics where something could be hanging for black.
Well, not my pieces. So what if we just go for the exchange sacrifice that I want to do in the other position?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this makes a lot of sense practically speaking. And now as white, I'd probably try to trade these bishops, bishop c4.
Yeah, and we get this position where obviously, white doesn't have any problems, but perhaps I can just claim that even once we get here, well, okay, I just dropped the pawn. Oh, then that hangs b7. I don't know. You tell me.
Yes, looks still reasonable chances there for black to hold such an endgame, but in the game he has gone for more prudent way, not sacrificing anything. Knight a5, although I'm somewhat concerned for black.
Knights on the rim are dim, but here the knight does double duty. It covers b7 and c4, and then queen c1 was played.
Now the exchange stack is better version.
Oh, for sure. Just rook takes e3, then knight takes c5, and black's pieces come to life, and he doesn't. Do you see Jan's face? He was surprised by it.
Oh, he did. Okay. Yeah, I didn't catch that moment, but actually, how do you solve the problems concretely? Because there is a discovery, and I'd want to play queen a3, but that knight on d2 has to be protected.
So queen d1?
Yes, but then bishop c3 maybe?
Ugh.
Yeah, suddenly black's pieces, they're coming to life.
Yeah. Okay, so what other... You kind of have to move your queen though, right? There's discoveries.
I'm thinking about rook d1, but okay, he thought better of it. Queen d1. And now, does bishop c3 win the e4 pawn? That's the question.
But the problem, I guess, knight a4 to c3 would have been an issue after rook d1 with a fork of everything.
Yeah, very, very true, yes.
So he goes queen d1 instead. And this is a moment where I think as a chess player, and he plays bishop c3, but you always want to pounce like immediately, like let me go win a pawn. And maybe that can allow white to escape a little bit, but he plays bishop c3. So step one is here, but after knight to f3, I guess, or knight c4, do we just trade and take this pawn and say 2 pawns for the exchange? That's good enough.
Yeah, there does seem to be a lot of trades coming. Seems like after I assume he's going to take on d1 and c4 and then e4, and at the end of the day, yeah, we do see the 2 pawns for 2 pawns and a knight for a rook.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure, maybe white at the end of that line, maybe he goes knight b6, and okay, but he goes for this version.
Okay, the knight is protected. I was like, knight, yeah, I thought you would trade on c4 first, but actually take on a5 is probably a bad thing because that frees the c3 square for the knight. Yeah,
that's what I also missed originally. So now, yeah, maybe you don't want to take on a5. You do still have this option of knight b6, but that leaves all the minor pieces on the board. You might blunder an exchange somehow.
I can't even count how many pieces it remains. So I would definitely blunder something there. But knight b6, where does the rook go?
Right. Knight d5 does come quickly. So where do you put this rook?
And if rook c5 is like knight a4 potentially?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, knight forks. Scary.
Yeah, strangely enough. Yeah, because rook 6, knight d5 I definitely don't like. Rook e8 also looks quite passive.
So maybe it's the right move.
Yeah, but I'm worried about something like either bishop b5 and knight d5 or knight d5 right away.
I forgot about bishop. Not even forgot. I just didn't see it was legal, and that's annoying.
So yeah, it's still more annoying than I would think. It does go rook c5. So if knight f4, I guess just rook c7, still you can't really take on c3.
Although, am I walking to some kind of pin potentially, or this is bishop e5 defending?
Yeah, could get really tricky. Although with rook 7, also white needs to watch out. Maybe bishop b3 is in the air. Although, okay, you do always have a check on d8.
But rook c7, maybe knight d5, your move from earlier?
Yes, true. Knight d5 does make a lot of sense there. Yeah. At some point, black might have to give up the b pawn just because so much is loose, like the bishop on c3, knight on a5, and hold with the 4-on-3.
I thought you were going to say at some point someone's going to blunder a fork, because I feel like my head is on a swivel. I'm like looking which way, knight d5, knight came to a4. But I guess after knight d5, as you're saying, you can just take, and then probably the worst is behind black. I don't think there's any tremendous difficulty there.
Although you do have to be somewhat careful because, again, things are hanging. Like the knight on a5 is hanging. How do you get it out of harm's way after knight d5?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out. Maybe I start with e6 there.
Yeah, rook b5.
So, this knight move is just begging to be played because it forces this. There's an e6, rook b5, and you don't actually threaten knight takes c3 because my knight will take back. So
yeah, but if...
No, go ahead.
So, like, first of all, if you move the knight b7's hanging, but I can attack the knight on e4, and suddenly things, they're getting kind of dicey.
Yeah, everything is just holding on by like the thinnest of threads, and we see knight d5 on the board. So we may, in fact, get a position like this, and maybe e6 is incorrect. Perhaps we can save that up. But what moves does black have here? Everything is just defending each other.
Exactly. And I don't know what white is probably turning something along the lines of f3 bishop attacking this knight. But I don't, like, as black, I don't want all my pieces hanging for another move. I want to find some sort of consolidation, but it's really difficult to find it.
And we have a live position, knight c6 played, giving up b7. So
yeah, and also allowing this knight, like, I'm looking at bishop d3 or f3.
Okay, I think I know what he wants. Bishop d3, he'll play knight d2, and yes, he'll be down a piece for a couple pawns. Maybe he's hoping that survives, but it doesn't.
Really wait. It is tricky because you can imagine that white's knight on c3 will also be hanging. So it's very concrete. Like bishop d3, knight d2. If you take on c3, I take on b1. And then what do you recapture with?
Probably the rook.
And because you have knight a5, knight b5. Okay, yeah, I missed this.
Yeah, it's essential. No, but it's a far down the line where it's so easy to overlook in your initial calculations while visualizing. And then thankfully you have this move, because if not, you have two minor pieces threatened. And actually, sorry, I returned to the game because bishop d3 has in fact been played. And you see the eval bar going up in Jan's favor.
Yeah, this might actually win a piece. You might have to go to the line that we just showed, and in that position, yeah, it's a piece for two pawns. Okay, obviously, still a long ways to go to win that position, but definitely not what Norbek wanted.
And you know why that variation we're looking at was so hard to spot initially? There was a rook on b5. So the saving move there was knight to b5. And to see that from far out is a little hard sometimes. The square has been vacated and the knight can jump there. So, I mean, knight d2 or knight d6, you'll get a rook, but you're going to lose your bishop and the knight for that rook. And it's an extra piece for a couple pawns. And I think objectively, it has to be winning for white, right?
Yeah, exactly. So black has the option of either sacrificing or either keeping a bishop or a knight. Maybe you keep the bishop just to have the opposite color bishop on the board. Although now that I mention it, I might not be able to get it because I was thinking knight d4. But you can actually take on b7. You don't even have to take on e4 here.
And
take
maybe
b7.
Maybe you absolutely have to take on b7 because bishop e4, your points after knight b5,
yes.
Rook b5. You can make them like bishop here, and there's already threats, and you got to keep your bishop. And rook c4 traps this knight almost. So
Yeah,
Wow.
but yeah, it didn't work on account of rook b7. So Nuremberg does try our initial variation with knight d2 instead.
Right, just showing how everything was hanging. So instead, knight d2. And
Oh, but yeah, I think Nepo missed the same idea, this knight b5, because he went for this, which I think it's not as good, right?
can I just trade rooks and move my bishop away?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, he missed the knight b5 idea.
Okay, and to show that one more time for everybody, that after knight takes c3, knight takes b1, you're concerned about knight d4 ideas and this knight being loose. You could take knight takes b1, but that just looks counterintuitive.
No, knight d4 there, actually. Oh, okay, rook b2, yeah, maybe.
Right, like it looks very suspicious, but I see what your point is. Like you have everything covered on e2 check, your rook protects the knight, it just looks not great. But the rook takes b1, knight e5, the only move that keeps white ahead is knight to b5 because it attacks this rook on c7. The bishop can retreat, and that should be good enough. But as we get back to the game, the rooks have been traded. The bishop came to d4. The knight escapes. And so, Jeffrey, at this point, the knights may have to awkwardly defend one another, and it still looks unpleasant for black.
True, yeah. Knight a5 might have to be played, which
one?
Really awkward. I was thinking the b3 knight, yeah. But it does feel very awkward, and still with, yeah, definitely a wise decision by Nepo to keep all the minor pieces on, because trading one might relieve some of the pressure, but now, yeah, everything's still kind of loose.
And he chooses knight c to a5, so not minding that his knights are towards the rim over here. I guess his point is that you can't attack this piece on b3 because b7's covered. The b3 knight defends the bishop.
Mm-hmm. The good news is that white's knight on a4 is dominated by the bishop.
That's true.
Because if the knight was on the king side, it's over. But now, at least in this case, it's not so easy for white to get the knight back in the game.
Easy for me to do it. But you make a great point. The bishop, it dominates this knight. We were talking about bishop 3 squares away from a knight here. It's a great illustration of that. And to Jeffrey's point, that if this knight could get to d6 or g5 somewhere over on the king side, then black would be in huge trouble. But for now, there's no easy way to get that knight out.
But yeah, so both sides are kind of tying down each other. Although for Nepo, you have the knights are completely stuck. That's great, but there's no actual way to increase the pressure.
I'm trying to give white free moves and understand where white could even. Is his king going somewhere? Do I have to not even be worried about that?
Also, black has a decision. Do you expand with f5, e5, e4, or is that overextending?
I would not do that because pawn chains are only as strong as the base pawn. And I feel like as soon as I play f5, I just have to be concerned about this pawn on g6 if this bishop were ever to be able to wrap around.
Right. White having the rook, yeah, you want to make as little weaknesses as you can. Because, yeah, if you have too many targets, that rook is just going to be too much to handle.
And there must have been a subtle inaccuracy there because all of a sudden the EVA bar went up and doubled. It was like plus 1.5 or 1.3 or whatever.
Oh, because I want to play knight c5. Wait, I was thinking rook d8, although no, there's knight d7 still.
Okay.
So what is the issue here?
Maybe is there a way I can get after these pawns somehow? I don't see it so clearly. So he goes knight c5.
Yeah, I don't actually see. I mean, maybe the trade does benefit white somehow, but don't see anything concrete.
I see it. Okay, so here, bishop a4. You don't have knight c4, I don't think, because after knight c4, I have rook b7, and then bishop e8.
Okay, and then after bishop a4, I can't. Oh, because king e7, rook b5 drops a piece. So actually, it's not easy to make a move.
Yeah, your pieces are stuck, and so that's why the evaluation is getting in white's favor. And no move yet from Jan. Both players down to.
Oh, what, buddy? He found it. Wow.
Can I go king? C? You can hear me, king c?
Yeah, far away from the chain.
Oh my gosh, can I take on b6 there at the end? Like just go for these pawns, or that be?
Nah. Probably you wouldn't want to do that. But yeah, king 7, that is not an easy move to play if you have to.
But we process of elimination did, right? King e7, there's rook to b5, just winning on the spot, wins a piece. Knight c4, rook to b7, that's terrible with the bishop coming to e8. So king c7, but even that looks so wrong.
Yeah, this is really tough. I'm wondering about knight c6. Does this change the equation in any way?
Knight c6.
Because if you take, maybe I take and I rush back. But if you go rook b7 once again, I have an option to go knight e7, but like my king is close to mated there.
Yeah, f4, rook d7 check type of ideas. Okay, well, rook b7
So,
now.
but yeah, now this rook b7 is going to hurt.
Yeah, I flipped on the engine real quick. The only move there was king c7 to play knight to b7.
Yeah, Nepo just does not give you any room for error.
Okay, so f5, bishop e8. That looks like a problem. I mean, it's almost checkmate, right? f4 and king is.
Yeah, I think bishop e8 looks really good here.
And
although g5, maybe g5.
And if I take your pawn?
G4, yeah, I'm trying to.
Oh, no, this is a really good point because now if you play h3, there aren't too many pawns remaining.
Yeah, and also you got to worry about the f2 pawn.
Very true. Like if this knight could wrap around to e4, but he can't. And there's no more checkmates, right? Like you can't play f4 because of en passant.
But I think Nepo will eventually play f-something, f3 probably, and get this past h pawn.
That makes perfect sense. But if you play f3 and I take, then I also have an e pawn that can roll.
Yeah, maybe you go knight d7 here just to prepare.
Okay, and he's under 10 seconds.
You got to move now.
All right, Beck, what are you doing? Okay, on bishop c5.
So f4, I guess he wants to take a knight somewhere.
Well, if f4, then maybe I don't even have to take, right?
Sorry, yeah, f3 probably forces.
Although, does it?
Okay, starts with rook h7.
Knight c6.
Now, but for sure, Nepo cannot allow e5, e4 because then it really comes hard to. Although now, okay, Nuremberg might be getting that option.
Yeah, how does White win this game?
He might want to go h3, but as you said, it's trading a lot of pawns suddenly.
How do you break this configuration?
Yeah, he tries h3.
Okay, I can't. Yeah, he's just gonna stay put. Okay, watch out for some kind of rook a5 or something. Maybe this bishop. So it goes here.
So probably we're gonna see a lot of dancing. Nordbeck needs to try and be as fast as possible, accumulate all these precious seconds.
It's a fortress, and I'm kind of guessing, but I haven't seen the eval bar change at all, and it's at that 2.5 range where with the actual material and just the steady eval bar, I think this might be a draw with best play.
But even if it is a draw with best play, that doesn't mean that that Nepo is going to give it. So the question is for White: do you go f3 g4? Is that basically the only idea, or do you try and harass the knight with your king?
I think you sit on it for a while, and Nordbeck will stay around 12 seconds or whatever it'll be, and there's f3, and he wants you.
Knight c2. Okay.
91. He bought the f3
Wow. Okay. And there's no way to get on e6. Wait, can you go king h1 and rook d6?
Bishop move.
So yeah, he gets it back. So okay, he has to go something like bishop c7. Wait, what?
He blundered his bishop. Oh, look at him. He can't believe it. After that amazing defense, he just hangs his bishop.
Yeah, that is painful. I think bishop c7, rook e6. I think that it should be a draw because you'll be able to trade off this g pawn.
Yeah. And then there's knight d4 also.
Yeah, knight 4 and f4. I mean, that's just, we'll exchange that.
Oh my gosh. I mean, he just did everything perfectly in the defense there. And then he straight up hangs a piece at that last moment, gives away his bishop.
Yeah, I'm speechless right now. That's such a tough feeling to have defended so well and then to lose on a careless blunder like that.
Oh, that's, heartbreaking after dozens of moves of sturdy defense to lose like that. I mean, it feels bad.